Good snowy morning. Ladies on the call for the 4th annual Women's Veterans Symposium. It's March 11th, 2023. And we are pleased that you have chosen to spend some time with us this morning. Hopefully you've got a nice cup of coffee or your beverage of choice, and you're ready to hear some great information on resources that are available to veterans, female veterans in particular, and also to pick up on the vibe that is in the room and on this call, which is there are many wonderful female veterans who are continuing their service to the community and to female veterans and to others. So we would like to kick off our program, if we may, with, I think we have a little song, don't we? Margie, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
We're ready for you.
Okay. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Margie, that was beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for kicking us off in the right spirit this morning. Bravo is right. I see lots of comments.
Hi, everybody. It's Cory Booker. What an honor to address you all today as you gather for the 4th annual virtual Women Veterans Symposium. Events like this are so critical to enhancing women veterans' awareness of VA benefits and services, and for making VA a better option for women who seek to access the care and benefits that they've earned through their incredible military service. I commend and thank VA Newark Regional Office and Operation Sisterhood for hosting today's event and for all the hard work you do on behalf of New Jersey's women veterans. I'd also like to especially thank all the veterans that are in attendance. You all are heroes. You all are patriots. Thank you for what you've done for our nation. Since our nation's very founding, women have fought bravely and have served their country honorably in order to preserve and advance freedom and liberty for all Americans. Our history is interwoven with the stories and truth of women who have served with courage and distinction. And today, we are blessed to have women serving in all capacities and positions across our military and in all ranks. Women are the fastest growing demographic group within the veteran community. Over 10% of veterans are women today, and the VA estimates that the number will increase to 15% by 2035. And in the great state of Jersey, almost 30,000 women veterans call our state home. I'm proud to have the privilege of working with organizations like yours, and I look forward to continuing to fight to improve healthcare and other services for women veterans, because while the system's improved, there are still inequities. still injustices for women veterans, and we must address them. We must ensure that women veterans are receiving the kind of services through the VA without exposure to trauma, which is why I continue to advocate for stand-alone women clinics here in New Jersey. These clinics must also provide easier access for women veterans to OBGYN, mammography, and other gender-specific health care. We must ensure better maternal health outcomes for women, which is why I will be reintroducing the Doula for VA Act, which will allow veterans who use the VA for maternity service to have doulas at no cost to the veteran. In the Senate, I'll continue to fight for the expansion of healthcare services and benefits for women veterans. With that, I just want to say thank you again to all of you gathered together here. Not only are you serving our country and have been champions for our American ideals, but you are serving each other. You all are supporting each other, creating a community of strength. I want to thank you all for this symposium. It is an example of that truth. You all are making sure that as a country, our truth goes marching on. Thank you.
Hi everyone, this is Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill, proudly representing the 11th District of New Jersey. And I want to thank everyone at the VA Newark Regional Office, including Director Francis Abdullah and Jennifer Myers, for hosting this Operation Sisterhood alongside the VA. First of all, I want to honor some of our nation's far too often unsung heroes, and those are our women veterans. Too many times their service goes unrecognized, and they've really been a part of our military history since the birth of our nation. From women who disguise themselves as men in order to serve, like Deborah Sampson during the American Revolution, to the incredible women who joined me at the Naval Academy, and women like Air Force General Lori Robinson, who was the first woman ever to lead U.S. Combatant Command, and also all those women who just flew over the Super Bowl, the all-women fighter squadron. All of these women have worn the uniform of the United States military, like so many of you here this evening, and you've served our country with bravery and honor. Our women veterans have made the same sacrifices to serve, and they're entitled to the same benefits and respect as our male veterans. That means we have to properly prepare and equip our service women and men, both while deployed and when they transition back into civilian life. As women make up the fastest growing segment of our country's veterans, we have to improve our ability to meet the healthcare and family needs that women veterans face. Last month, I announced my Jersey Strong agenda, which these are the first 5 bills I plan to introduce in this new Congress, and one of those bills is the Vet Centers for Mental Health Act. As you know, vet centers provide mental health counseling for PTSD, military sexual assault, grievance services, and so this is really important, and this bipartisan legislation would expand access to vet center mental health counseling across a wide berth of American communities. The Common Sense Bill leverages recent census data as well as the VA's own statistical data to identify areas where expanded vet center access is badly needed in currently underserved high population states. And so I'm fighting hard to bring another vet center to North Jersey. Every veteran deserves quality health care, educational opportunities, and workforce training to be ready for success. Our country's veterans are willing to give their entire life for all of us. The least we can do is make sure their lives when they return are richer and better. As a member of Congress, I'll do everything in my power to ensure that goal becomes a reality. So to all our women's veterans, you represent the best of America, and we thank you all for your service.
I'm going to start again just to say I am pleased today to introduce our keynote speaker. Lourdes Tiglao is the Executive Director for the Center for Women's Veterans, Office of the Secretary. And I will tell you that before we started our program this morning, Lourdes was not sure if it was okay that she didn't have some slides and technology, but given our luck today, I think we are all pleased, and I'm sure Lourdes is relieved that we will be able to have, honestly, a nice visit and conversation with her. She serves as the primary advisor to the Secretary on department policies, programs, and legislation that affect women veterans. In addition, she oversees the center's activities, which include monitoring and coordinating VA administration of health care, benefits, services, and programs for women veterans, serving as an advocate for cultural transformation, both with VA and in the public, and in recognizing the service and contributions of women veterans and service members, and raising awareness of the responsibility to treat women veterans with dignity and respect. So it is our great pleasure to have Lourdes with us this morning. Lourdes, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, and good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to be here on a Saturday morning with you. It is beautiful right now in DC, although it's a little cold. At least the sun is up. So one of the things that I wanted to make sure, because I know that I probably haven't met many of you out there in Jersey. Sadly, it is one of the states that I have yet to make it to, but it is on the list for this year. In the spirit of looking at the culture of respect and service, and part of that is getting to know the person who is working beside you, working alongside you, but also for today, speaking to you. And so I wanted this conversation to be a little bit of a getting to know you, but also just, for me to let you know a little bit about my background. And also where I draw a little bit of inspiration from my life. You've heard, you saw Phyllis's comment about the Militarians Memorial. It's so critical for women veterans to tell their stories about how they navigated particular junctures in life and how they chose one path or another. And why is that important? Because a lot of the stories of our women veterans are not being told in history books. They're not being recorded they're not being taught in schools. A lot of times, how we hear about these stories is through each other, through communities like this. For those who choose to tell their stories either by themselves or through other means like the Library of Congress's Veterans History Project or the Military Women's Memorial, we all have a story. And so this is just a little bit about me. And then I'll tell you a lot more about some of the work that we're doing in the Center for Women Veterans. So many of you probably don't know that I wasn't born here. I was born in the Philippines from a pretty humble background, immigrated when I was 10 years old, not speaking English. And I still distinctly remember that I was pretty adamant that I didn't want to come here because, one, I knew nothing about America except for what I saw in movies. And but my family kept talking about it's a land of opportunity, a lot of resources. You can get a better education. It is a promise of a better life for us. So again, that was great, but I didn't know this America or the language. And so there was a lot of firsts when I first came here. I remember I came from the Philippines, a very tropical country, to Indiana, where there's snow, which I had never seen before. So there was a lot of learning on my first year. One, trying to learn the language, but two, just getting acclimated to the climate. So my first year was a lot of hand gestures and exasperation from the beginning. So despite those initial challenges, I made it through, graduated from high school, got a couple of scholarships, and decided that there must be more to my life than being in Indiana. And so I looked at my options and ended up joining the Air Force. However, when I first started to apply, I was rejected. I was rejected because you can't tell from the box, but I was not tall enough. I had to get a waiver after quite a lengthy process and finally got in. However, during the course of this first ordeal, I kept thinking to myself, am I not enough to serve this nation? So fast forward a few years later, I was serving in the Air Force as a part of the critical care air transport team. Any Air Force folks out there? Yes, no? Amazing fellow airmen. I fell in love with medicine. That was the AFSC that they put me in. When 9/11 happened, I got a notification that I was going to be sent over to Afghanistan. During that time, I had an inkling that there was a high probability that I wasn't coming back. So remember that I wasn't a citizen when I first came in here. I was not a citizen when I joined the military. And so I thought, if I'm going to die for this country, I better make sure that I'm a citizen of this country that I'm going to live my life for. And so I put in my application before I left. And then I came back early 2002 to a telegram that said, we're sorry, because you missed your DOJ interview. Your application is denied and you're going to have to reapply again. And by the way, send a few more $100 for us. And, you know, for our enlisted folks out there, I was enlisted. A few $100 is a lot of money. And so when I was younger, I was a little bit more temperamental. And so I promptly called the INS in Cincinnati and I said, what is this telegram and why am I getting asked to reapply? And they said, well, we're sorry, ma'am, that's the policy and we can't do anything about it. Raise your hand if you've heard that one. So I tried to argue my point, couldn't get through. So instead of giving up, I went and got into my car and drove over to Cincinnati from Wright-Patterson and demanded to speak to someone who was in charge. After about 15 minutes of wrangling with someone, I finally got a person to take me seriously. We walked into their office. I pleaded my case and I said, the only time I'm going to reapply again is if you take my spot out there in the deployment and I get to take your seat. 2 weeks later, I'm getting my citizenship and sworn in. Now, I say this because not everyone is going to speak up for what is right. Not everyone will use their voice to make sure that they stand up for what's right, not just for themselves, but for others. And I say this because this concept of community and sisterhood, that is what gives us strength to speak up, not only for ourselves, but also for each other. While I was going through this hurdle, I couldn't help but also question myself. Have I not done enough to be a citizen of this nation? So after almost 12 years in the Air Force, I transitioned over to civilian life. And honestly, that was a little bit rough for me, as I'm sure others can probably relate. But I also found something that I loved. When I found out about Team Rubicon back in its nascent days in 2010, I fell in love with disaster response and found inspiration in serving communities during some of their darkest days. But that is just one story. We are the stories of immigrants, stories of people of color, the stories where English isn't our first language. We're the stories of those who were told, either subtle or blatant, you can't. You don't belong here. Women don't belong in this line of work. Women's History Month is a time for us to remember and honor and respect the unending contributions that women have made and continue to make in our country. Women have led the fight for equal rights throughout our nation's history. With steadfast courage, we've marched, won the right to vote, fought against injustice, and overcome countless hurdles, and expanded the opportunities for what all Americans can dream to achieve. And there's no more notable area where women have contributed to our nation is in the military. You've heard from our legislators in your state. Women have served since the Revolutionary War, officially acknowledged in 1901, but unofficially, obviously, since the country's founding. Despite these displays of valor, women didn't begin to receive greater military status until World War II. Today, there's nearly 230,000 women on active duty who continue to serve in harm's way in hostile areas. Our nation now has more than 2 million women veterans, representing almost 10% of our nation's veteran population. You've heard that women veterans are the fastest growing demographic group. In fact, by 2040, we will represent almost 18% of the veteran population. And so with increasing numbers of women veterans, our duty to provide them with the services and benefits that they need is more paramount. We've been working to reduce barriers for women veterans and increase access to benefits and services, so much that the number of women veterans using VA has tripled since 2001. My staff and I at the Center for Women Veterans are working hard to empower women veterans to achieve their life goals through VA benefits and services and opportunities in collaboration with our community stakeholders, and that includes all of you out there in New Jersey. We're working to increase those access to benefits no matter where they live, support women veterans to overcome those hurdles and access, and advocate for those cultural changes, both internally and externally. So I'm going to outline several areas that we are really focusing on. One, empowering women in economics. We're working hard on women veterans entrepreneurship, working with our Office of Small Disabled Business Unit to make sure that women veterans entrepreneurs are actually are successful in gaining contracts within government. We are working hard and focusing on getting women veterans in STEM. We're developing a pilot with Google to get a pilot training program for women veterans to get into cloud computing. Next is empowerment in self. I'm sure a lot of you have already heard about the I'm Not Invisible campaign, which brings awareness to the barriers and challenges that women veterans face in obtaining care and services. So the evolution of the I Annie campaign has grown from not just portraits to also women telling their stories in collaboration with the Veterans History Project. To date, the project has crossed over 50 states, 75 cities, and the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Native American, Alaska Native nations, capturing more than 3,200 portraits of women veterans. The Medallion of Strength is a little icon that you can use, whether it's just on your little name block or your signature block or on any of your assets or collateral to identify and acknowledge women veterans and celebrate their identity. I don't know about you, but I'm not one for, I guess, patches on my jacket. We have a different style sometimes as women. So I personally prefer having the logos on some of my assets, like my water bottles or my bag. And so the last one is advocating for women veterans, empowering to advocate for women veterans. One of them is the bystander training. It is VA's effort for culture change to eliminate sexual harassment and assault as part of the Deborah Sampson Act. It is a training that anyone and everyone can and should take in order to make sure that they know how to intervene if they see any harassment that is happening in front of them. So we work hard to make sure that women veterans are seen, and one of those efforts is actually through the Naming Spaces and Naming Facilities Initiative. To date, there are currently 5 out of over 150 VA medical centers. There are only 5 that are named after women, 4 named after women veterans. Now that seems really small, but if you take into consideration how long it took from the first one to the second one, which is over a decade, from the second one to the third one, also a decade. And then when 2021 hit, the Center for Women Veterans started really amplifying this disparity. And the 3rd, 4th, and 5th came in succession with just a tiny little bit over 1 year of getting those VA medical centers named after women. The latest one actually in Alaska with Colonel Mary Rasmussen. And so that is the power of advocacy, of showing and highlighting those disparities and making sure that we are staking our claim in our place in how we have written our name in history. Women veterans have been making history as long as there's been in America, and they continue to make history today. VA is here to support each and every one of them. Women continue to fight for equality, equal rights, equal pay, equal justice, and simply put, just to get a fair shot. We've come a long way and we still have far to go. And today and every day, we celebrate our country's women veterans. Those who have served, those who are serving, and those who will still write the history of tomorrow. Make sure one of those stories that others hear tomorrow and in the future is yours. We have the Women's Military Memorial. We got Phyllis right here with us, the Library of Congress Veterans History Project. Those are just two places where you can tell your story. The next and future generation of service women, women veterans, and leaders of this great nation will be looking to you for hope and inspiration of the potential grit, strength, and greatness that they can achieve. The Air Force taught me lessons about resiliency and grit. My friends and mentors who accompanied me have reinforced my sense of self-worth. All of these have helped us to thrive and to grow beyond our perceived limitations. And the fabric of this nation is woven with threads as colorful as our people, and mine is just one of those stories of a million stories of women who have shaped the history of this nation. Go tell yours to the world and inspire hope for the next generation of young women that they can make a difference. Thank you.
Lourdes, thank you for such beautiful words. I'm sure you all heard the same thing, that your sisterhood has reinforced your sense of self-worth. I think a lot of women on this call that resonates with the feeling today and the feeling in the community of sisterhood of female veterans. And at this time, Lourdes, thank you so very much for making time for us this morning. I know you've had a hectic schedule, and we appreciate you carving out time to be with us and to share your story. And I am thrilled to turn the floor over to Jen Myers, who has talk about folks making a trip to be somewhere and to be in the room. We appreciate all that you have done, Jen Myers, to be with us today to set up the speakers and the topics for today. And with no further ado, I would like to welcome you. We went on without you, but we tried not to make it look too easy, Jen. So everybody knows how much we need your help on this. So I'm
no, it's not easy. It's not easy. Hello. Thank you, Ms. Lourdes. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, presenters. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Can y'all see me? Okay, cool. I got to tell you, this morning was more than an ocean. To wake up and find out that there is no internet connection in the home as you are trying to prepare and get things set up for a program that is to start in a few hours is more than one can deal with. And then having to drive from South Jersey to North Jersey, because I live all the way down South Jersey, close to Philadelphia, driving up to close to New York at record speed as it's snowing, need I say more? But that's what we do to make sure that things happen. I definitely wanted to be here. So again, my apologies for being late, and Miss Lourdes, I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to greet you and welcome you. I'm going to assume that Margie Franklin sang our national anthem and did an out of the park job. Yes.
Correct. Is recorded. Margie did a beautiful job.
Awesome. So this morning we're going to have as we did last year, bang up presentations. We heard from our keynote speaker. We also, I'm hoping that we did hear from a number of our legislative representatives sharing the latest and greatest and giving greetings as well. We have a number of people here that will be speaking today, and we'll also have during our breakout sessions. So at this time, I'm just going to go over our program for the day. We will hear from a number of our community partners during our breakout sessions. I'm going to just go over and briefly introduce our speakers so that they can, just kind of give you a brief rundown of what their topics are. When when we go into the breakout sessions, you can choose. I'm going to turn it over to Jackie, and Jackie will explain how this will work. So I'm going to go to the next slide. I will be speaking on benefits today. I will give a brief overview of the PACT Act and claim submissions, as well as just touch briefly on VSOs. Next, we have Yvonne Nelson. Yvonne, can you just give us a brief, a hi, and just touch on what you'll be talking about today?
Hello, everyone. Well, I'm going to just talk about educational benefits in general, if anyone is interested, but more specifically to Veterans Readiness and Employment, formerly VOC Rehab. That's Chapter 31 benefits for any veteran who has a service-connected disability. And it should impact more folks now that the PACT Act is in effect. So any questions you have, we can brainstorm, find the answers. Retroactive induction is a big deal. So come on over to my place.
Thanks, Yvonne. Then we're going to hear from Cherie Sinibaldi from Education.
Hi, good morning. I will also be talking about education benefits, but more specifically, Chapter 33, which is the post 9/11 GI Bill, Chapter 30, Chapter 1606, and Chapter 35, which, as similar to VRNE, does have an impact with dealing with the PACT Act as well.
Awesome, thank you. And is the doctor in the house today?
I'm not sure that she is.
Oh, okay. I hope she's okay. I'll see what's going on. If she can join us, I'm hoping I really do hope she's okay, because I know she wanted to be part of this. In addition to the Dr. Robeson Jasper, we have next Louisa.
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone. I'm going to be speaking on nutrition, wellness, and slightly I will touch on hormones.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Katie.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Katie Bishop, and I'm the Intimate Partner Violence Assistance Program Coordinator for VA New Jersey. And I will be talking about IPV, introducing it as a concept, identifying all the programs that we have on the IPV. And as Ms. Tiglao, Ms. Lourdes Tiglao introduced during her keynote presentation, she shared a little bit about the VA's White Ribbon campaign to end harassment and discrimination in VA. And I'll also be talking a little bit about that. So I certainly appreciate that introduction.
Awesome.
Looking forward to talk to everyone.
Thank you. Vet Center, do we have a representative from the Vet Center? One of the jewels of VA. If not, I will have someone, I'll have some information available to our participants or attendees. Next. Debt management. Let's talk about the money.
Let's talk about the money, right? Good morning,
Right.
everyone. My name is Anna, and I am the CEO of Financial Wisdom Solutions. And I will be giving almost like a workshop, I want to say, on how you can get your debt under control. I think that, as most of you know, finances affects every single area of our lives. So being able to get our finances under control instead of our finances controlling us is very, very important. So please come on over and let's do some talking. Let's figure out how we can get your finances under control. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And there's her information. Any questions with regard to our presenters for today? Okay.
And I would just like to remind everybody that we will not be recording those sessions. So, and also, well, I'll turn the logistics over to Jackie to explain how that will work.
Perfect. Also, I want to also remind folks that even if you don't feel that this would be for you, you may know someone or run into someone that could benefit from the information that you gain from these workshops. So please, please feel free to jump on any of the workshops, because we all can learn something and share that information with someone about our day-to-day lives. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jackie, and then she'll explain the process, and our sessions will begin at 11 o'clock, so that in between that time and 11 o'clock, you can grab a snack and then come right back. So Jackie, the floor is yours.
Hold on one second, Jen, because what I'd like to do before we do that little break is I wanted to give a shout out or an opportunity. Jackie, if you can unshare your screen to maybe recognize some of the other veteran support organizations that are on this call. We appreciate you joining us, and we appreciate all that you do. But Phyllis Wilson, would you like to say a hello to everybody and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do? Like we don't know, but we'd like to hear it again.
Well, thanks, Holly. And, again, Lourdes and I, we cross paths all the time. So Lourdes, shout out to my little Filipina. I have a daughter-in-law that is from the Philippines, born and raised, came here also to the States, not speaking English. So I can completely appreciate what that must be like. And I'm the total other end of the spectrum, which I didn't know until a couple of years ago. I'm an Army veteran, but it turns out I only learned in 2018 at the age of 58 that I actually have ancestors that came over on the Mayflower. Oh my God, how can you not know these things about your own history, right? But it's the military history that I want to talk to you about for a quick second. I work at the Military Women's Memorial at the entrance to Arlington National Cemetery. It's the only major national place in the country that tells every one of our stories. And just on Monday this week, 5 days ago, we made history at the memorial. All 4 women that are currently serving 4-star admirals or generals had never been in the room together before. They were in a room at the memorial. Nora O'Donnell from CBS Evening News was there. And watch, because this coming week, there'll be a long session where these 4 women talked about their 35 plus years in the service and how in the early days, when they showed up at assignments, how they were told blatantly in a way that cannot be done anymore, you're not wanted, we're going to make sure you fail. And here they are sitting on that stage now as 4 stars. So their stories in our database, which you would expect, but every one of us, whether we served a year or 2 or decades, it doesn't matter. We all are standing on the shoulders of giants. And guess what? We're next generation giants. If our stories aren't in that database, the researchers and the storytellers of tomorrow can't tell your story. And we love highlighting amazing women's stories, but we can only tell the ones that we know. So a challenge this year is we're adding 23,000 new stories to our database, which has 305,000. That's 10% of the stories, but 23,000 new ones. That means New Jersey, with nearly 30,000 women veterans in your state, I want 500 this year, 500 new stories. And so far, year to date, we have five from New Jersey. So you have 495 to go, 6. Sorry, just said we have 6. I love it. We need 490 plus stories, and it's so doable. With all the women that you cross paths with, ask them and just send them to womensmemorial.org. Up in the top right, they create an account and they own that account for life. They can go ahead and change it, their new memorable experience. They want a different picture in there. They want to tell their story in any way, shape, or form. We need those stories desperately to help amplify what the generations of women did for us beforehand. And these new stories will prove that what they did meant something. So thank you so much for giving me the chance. Womensmemorial.org. Register today and find a friend and get them registered too. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Phyllis. So lots of applause out there. That story was great, by the way, Phyllis. I saw it on the news and I look forward to watching the full footage of that. I also wanted to give a shout out to Gemma, who's with Community Hope. There's a new program there, the SSG Fox Suicide Prevention Program. Gemma, do you want to say hello and tell us a few words about what you've got going there?
Sure. Thank you so much, Holly. And I'm very grateful that Operation Sisterhood and Cornerstone published our flyer about the SSG Fox program in their bulletin. Thank you so much. And that you're such great supporters. And I just want to share, SSG Fox is very, very dear to my heart. It's a program that helps with suicide prevention. It's for all active duty military. So there's no, what's great about it is it doesn't have any type of barriers. So active duty includes National Guard. It's also for veterans, and it's also for the family members. So it's very, very open. There's no income limit. The only stipulation is you have to be honorably discharged, and you can't be dishonorable, and you can't have had a court martial. But everything else, you're welcomed. It's a great program that is been launched through the VA, so we're VA funded. And it's it emerged from the loss of a staff sergeant, Parker Gordon Fox, and his family pushed to have this legislation passed. He was 25 years old. And we're in 9 counties in New Jersey at the moment. And the email is ssgfox@communityhope-nj.org. I've put it in the chat. And please, I urge you, there's a lot of underlying struggles that come when you face those type of thoughts. I'm sure that you all know the triggers that can happen when you get to that point. And so this program is here to help support and navigate through those struggles. And our hope is that when we address and find relief for those members with those struggles, that those thoughts will subside and go away. So thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Gemma. And I just want to remind everybody that
I retired from the military, 20 years in the Air Force, and then transitioned right into VA. So with that said, still serving veterans, serving veterans. That's what we do here at the Newark Regional Office. I love it here. It is really a great opportunity to share and to really ensure that our veterans are aware of their benefits. Symposiums like this, where we're pulling together resources, I find are very important for our veterans. So from me to you, thank you for being on today. My portion, I will be covering VA 101. So we're going to be talking about benefits. Next slide. So the VA mission, very clear. It came from President Lincoln during his second inaugural address, and that is to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan. That is something that we do here. I think that's something that's accomplished throughout the nation with all of our VA counterparts. We take that very seriously. We want to be able to provide care for our veterans and for their family members as well. So during today's presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about the VA structure. I'm going to talk about compensation benefits. So I'll be covering disability and service connection. I will discuss military sexual trauma. I'll go over PACT Act updates. Then we'll talk a little bit about Veteran Service Organization, VA resources, and then I'll open the floor for any questions. So the structure of VA. We are one VA. However, VA is comprised of 3 areas: VBA, VHA, and NCA. VBA is your benefit side of the house. So you're talking compensation, pension, education benefits, home loan, VRNE, insurance. That falls under VBA. When we talk about VHA, that is healthcare, Veterans Healthcare Administration. VHA comprises primarily of your hospitals, you'll hear the term VAMC, VA medical centers, your CBOCs, your community-based, out-based clinics. Those are our primary areas that fall under healthcare. And then you have National Cemetery Administration, NCA. That covers your burials, cemetery services. So again, when we talk of VA, Veterans Affairs, which will be celebrating an anniversary on March 15th, as it became a cabinet, member of the US Cabinet on March 15th, 1989. VA, again, is comprised of 3 areas: the structure, VBA, VHA, and NCA. So let's talk about disability compensation. So in order for one to be eligible for disability compensation, they must have an other than dishonorable discharge. The disability must have arose while on active duty. It is presumed then to be service-connected. A pre-existing condition that one came in with upon entering the military, if it has been aggravated and worsened by military service, that'll be taken into consideration for service connection. Claims only need to be proven as more likely than not. That's a 51% likelihood of it being due to service for it to be service connected. So when a veteran submits a claim for service connection, and that would be on a VA Form 526EZ, VA will do the following. VA will request military records. So we will request those records that are in federal custody from DOD, Service Department, and those records are your service treatment records, medical records, and your service records. Okay, service records can be your annual appraisals, any awards and decks, orders, anything that's any documents that are in your military jacket. That's considered service records. And those records are very important. DD 214 could be in there as well. Training records, again, travel orders, travel records. Those are very important documents. And I would say this, for those that are still in the military or know someone that's still in service, it would be a good practice for that individual to get copies. Okay, just don't rely on the service department to house those documents for you and be able to send them over to VA. In some cases, it's good to have a copy of those records for your own safekeeping, just in case. I had a copy of my service records, and I had 3 copies of my service treatment records prior to separation from the military. VA will also request private treatment records from one's private physician with a signed release form. So if we need to reach out to your private provider, we need a signed release from the veteran allowing us to do so. In many cases, it is often easier for the veteran or service member to obtain a copy of those documents from their private provider and then forward it to VA for processing. Now, once we take a look at the form and the records, VA will make a determination if a VA examination, comp and pen exam, is warranted. If so, then the veteran will be notified. Normally it's via mail, regular mail. Sometimes it's a call from one of our contractors. So VA will schedule a request that a VA examination, comp and pen exam is conducted, and that will be at VHA. Once we get those results back from the VA examination, VA will review all the evidence of record to make a determination as to whether or not to service connect. And then at what compensable rate if it is a grant. VA will then send a notification letter with a decision to the veteran. It's not, we don't call the veteran and let them know what the decision is. Normally it is through the mail. I will say this, when that occurs and a veteran gets the letter, it is very important for that veteran to read the letter completely. If it is a denial, you want to really capture why the connection was denied, because in some cases, the veteran may have some documents or some additional information that they can provide that can possibly turn that denial into a grant. Okay, so you definitely want to read through that letter. It's very, very important information. Even if it's a grant, you want to read through that letter. For example, if it is over 30% and the veteran has dependents, then you want to make sure that those dependents are added to your award. Why? Because then that increases the amount that one would receive on a monthly basis. So again, it's important to read the letter completely. Okay. So next, I'm going to just touch on military sexual trauma. Military sexual trauma is a subset of personal trauma and refers to sexual harassment, sexual assault, or rape that occurs in a military setting. Okay, that's very important. The claims process for addressing MST, one would need to submit a 21526EZ, and that's the standard application form, as well as an 21078-1A. And that's the form that is specifically for stressors as it results or as it relates to personal trauma or assault. Okay. Now, in this process, VA will request military records. Again, just like in the standard process, we are going to request military records and service treatment records. The VA, again, will request private treatment records with a signed release. Same applies. VA will request a comp and pen exam if they feel an exam is warranted. VA will then look at all the evidence of record to make a determination as to whether or not to service connect, and if service connected, at what compensable rate. And then the veteran will be notified via mail as to the decision that has been made. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about markers, because I think this is something that's very important. When VA takes a look at evidence and information that's provided, when it comes down to an MST claim, we're going to look at, again, service treatment records and service records for markers. Now, what are markers? Markers are just points in time, things that kind of stand out of significance that is kind of other than the norm, okay? If there was a shift in performance, if there were onslaught of counseling, a change, a marker, okay? We look at all records. So service treatment records can shed a lot of light. Say, for example, if the individual was assaulted, didn't report it, but went to the hospital for care, for treatment. They may have had a pregnancy test, an STD test. Those can be considered markers. If there was, if we look at the service records, your military records, to look at performance ratings, if there were any LOCs, LORs, well, why? Okay, performance ratings can tell a story. If you were a top performer for like 2 years straight, and then all of a sudden, bam, there's a change in performance. We're getting letters of counseling. We are, our performance was a 5, now we're a 2 or we're a 3. Something happened. Something happened. So that may be considered a marker. Okay. Even if you have records with a private provider, we can take those into consideration. If you have reached out to law enforcement, made a formal report to law enforcement, they would have a record of such incident. If an inquiry was done, an official inquiry, now commanders can say, oh, I'm gonna take a look at that, I'll look into it, but there isn't a paper trail. When we say formal, we're looking for something that has on official letterhead that shows that an inquiry, something was conducted where there was questions and answers with a summary of the end result. So again, these are things that are looked for and looked at and taken into consideration. Very important. Police records, absolutely important. If the individual, the assailant, went to jail, served time, if there was a court proceeding or that individual got an Article 15, was dishonorably discharged, those are some of the things that, and you were part of that court process, court proceedings, and you may have documentation that speaks to the court proceedings that you participated in. Again, those are things that will be taken into consideration. In some cases, it may not be in your records, but you may have received or signed some document, an official document showing that you participated or you were made aware of such, and you kept that for your own, and it was not in the official in your service jacket. We can take that into consideration should you wish to hand that over to VA as part of the evidence file. If you go to a rape crisis center and they have documentation of the visit of the counseling there, that can be reviewed and taken into consideration. Mental health counseling centers, hospitals, physicians, those are medical documents that can be taken into consideration. Again, like I said earlier, pregnancy tests or tests for STDs, definitely we would take that into consideration. Performance appraisals, statements from family members, roommates, fellow service members, or clergy. If you went to the SARC, Sexual Assault Response Center, we can take some of that information into consideration as well. So these are some of the markers that we look for. Now, keep in mind, when we look at markers and the veteran on the 0781 provides a date, they should kind of line up, kind of coincide, because if one is claiming that they were assaulted in, I'd say, January of this year, and the performance was, and the slip in performance started way before, well, it's not going to be, we're probably not going to take the performance from before the incident into consideration. We won't, because it happened, the performance was slipping before. Now, that does not discount the fact that something happened. Okay, we just have to look from the incident that took place point forward. Does that make sense?
Jen, I see in the comments, somebody had shared that they didn't document, I think, while in service, but had family members write letters after the fact regarding change in personality and disposition and that kind of thing.
And those statements will be taken into consideration. I will say this, the meat of any claim is documentation, unfortunately. So I would say that's more so the gravy, but the hardcore meat would be the documentation. Anything that one can pull to show, it was reported, there was something from that time when you were in service during service time, that will be very helpful. Now, I will also say this, and we have to think of it from this perspective. Two things. There's compensation and there's mental well-being. So veterans may put in a claim for compensation, and unfortunately, there just isn't enough documentation for a grant. That's not saying that the VA does not acknowledge that it happened. We're not saying that it did not happen. We're just saying that, unfortunately, based on the evidence that's in the record, it's not enough for a grant.
Jen, can I also ask, there's a question in the chat, is there such thing as a statute of limitations, or how far back can a claim go?
Oh, it can go as far back. There is no statute. There's no statute. The key again is the proof, the documentation to show that something did happen, and therefore there was a court proceeding, or there was a police report, or there was a visit to the hospital, something. There needs to be something. If for some, and this is a touchy subject, again, it's not that VA is discounting that it happened. It's just that there's not enough for a grant. So that's the compensation side, okay? And I say that because even though there may not be a grant, a financial grant, there is always mental health services available. So keep in mind that your mental well-being is probably more valuable than the dollars. Okay, so with that said, again, vet centers, the hospital, there are counselors there. There are counselors always available on the ready to serve you and to help in that in that moment where you may feel stressed, you may start having flashbacks, reliving, anything that may trigger that feeling. You can definitely reach out to the hospital, to one of the vet centers for counseling and assistance. There will always be mental health services available, although it may not, when you put in the claim, it may not result in a grant for service connection. Okay. Are there any other questions in the chat, Holly?
Not at this time, but I'm watching it. And I'll just remind everybody, if you have a question that you'd like to ask, please feel free to drop it in the chat. And Jen doesn't mind me interjecting, I think. So.
Okay, next slide. So on October 1st, 2021, VBA increased MST operations to 8 centralized locations for MST claims. So prior to, MST claims were being handled throughout the country at all of our 56 regional offices. But to kind of streamline the process and have a more standardized process, VA centralized it into 8 locations. So here are the locations: Hartford, Lincoln, Columbia, South Carolina, Portland, Oregon, Muskogee, Oklahoma, Nashville, Tennessee, New York City, and Indianapolis. So those are our 8 centralized locations or regional offices that are now handling MST claims. So I went over the overall disability process. We talked about MST claims and MST markers. And I'm going to go over briefly about the PACT Act. So this came into play in August of last year. So I'm sure everybody heard about the PACT Act. PACT Act, PACT Act. What is the PACT Act? So PACT Act is the Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxics Act of 2022. That's a mouthful. So instead of saying promise to address, we just say PACT Act. Okay. So it's a new law that expands VA health care and benefits for veterans exposed to burn pits and other toxin substances. This law helps us to provide generations of veterans and their survivors with care and benefits they've earned and deserved. So it expands. What does it do? The PACT Act expands the eligibility for health care for our veterans with toxic exposures and veterans of the Vietnam era, Gulf War era, and post 9/11 era. That's very important. It expands eligibility for benefits for veterans exposed to toxic substances. So key components of the PACT Act. Next slide. The Act expands and extends eligibility for VA health care for veterans with toxic exposure and veterans of Vietnam era and Gulf War and 9/11, post 9/11 era. So VA will improve decision-making processes for determining what medical conditions will be considered for presumptive statuses. Okay, I'm going to touch more so on the compensation side of the house as opposed to the healthcare side of the house. But I would say this, healthcare has expanded for veterans that fall within that window.
Jen, I'm going to hop in and just say somebody had a hand raised. I had two comments about the previous topic, but the hand that was raised, is that regarding the PACT Act?
Yes, for me it is. Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I would like to get clarification. During my service, during the Gulf War, I being the low, well, I was in Intel. Being the low man on the totem pole, I had to work with the incinerators, burning the material, and then the next day going back to clean this incinerator out. We wasn't given proper, we had the cover-ups, but we didn't have masks and stuff like that. Would this PACT Act cover that if it happened
Yes.
on soil?
Yes, so we're gonna go, I'm gonna go through that and some of the presumptives that are covered in that as a result of exposure to toxins, because that's considered toxins. If you, and where were you deployed to?
I was stationed in Winter Harbor, Maine. I was with
Okay, so that's stateside. That's different. So here now, we're primarily, and I'm sorry if I confused you there. This is primarily for those that were in deployed locations. But I will, if you want, we can talk offline because there may be some other areas that we can look into to address that particular incident, okay, or issue.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. And Holly, you said that there was 2 questions from previous?
I do. Well, I think one was a question in, let's see, I recently, I'm just gonna read it to you, Jen. I recently got rated at 100%. Does that mean I can go to a local VA hospital to get treatment? And is this Newark office somewhere where we can go? I'm sorry, somewhere we can call to get answers that we have on VA, or do we call the 800 number?
Okay, so if you're 100%, you can definitely go to any of the facilities. And I would hope that you are already enrolled in the VA healthcare system. If not, I would encourage you to do so as soon as possible. As far as seeking assistance from the regional office, the regional office is open. You can go to public contact on the first floor, and they will, there are folks there that can assist. If you do not have what's called a veteran service officer, which I'll cover that later, you may seek one here as well at the regional office, and they are located on the 4th floor.
Thank you, Jen. And we had a hand up, but I think it's down now. If you still have a question, you can pop on real quick, but we have a lot of material to cover.
The PACT Act, it says requires research studies. What does that mean?
Okay, where are we looking at? Which one?
The top right of your screen, the slide that's up, it says the act requires research studies, top right.
Okay. The act requires research studies on the mortality of veterans who served in Southwest Asia. Okay, so in order for things to become law and applicable to us, there has to be some level of study. And I'm sure you've heard of the risk. So it's the war-related something. They have like 3 centers throughout the country, and East Orange has one of the centers, and it's like war-related illnesses. And they do a lot of testing there at the hospital if you go to the risk, and it's documented. So that's part of the research studies that are done. And you have to have research studies in order to track like cancer rates, in order to make a determination, okay, these many people were in this particular location, and as a result of them being exposed to burn pit toxins, airborne toxins, out of the 10,000 people that were there, I'm just throwing out numbers, 8,000 of them came up with sinus issues, 8,000, came up with rashes. So more likely than not, these physical or medical issues are can be related back to that time in service at that particular location. That's considered, you know, a bit of a study, research study. So
Okay, so to find correlation between the veteran population for our illnesses.
Correct.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you.
That was the word I was looking for, correlation, and it just wouldn't hit my head. Okay. Next slide. So for example, here you see for the Gulf War era and post 9/11 eligibility, if veterans served in any of these locations and time periods, they are eligible for Gulf War related presumptions. And here you'll see on or after August 2nd, on or after September 11th. So August 2nd, 1990 would be Gulf War, right? Desert Storm, Desert Shield. And then anything after September 11th, 2001 would be OEF, OIF. Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom. Okay, and then you see the locations. Any questions? Any questions in the chat for that, Holly?
There is not, and I would also say, if you're willing to share these slides, Jen, we can also send those out when we send the follow-up. So I think you've got a lot of information that might be helpful, if that's great.
Okay, so next slide. Now this one probably, I doubt it applies to anyone here, but you never know. Radiation presumptive locations. So with the PACT Act, again, radiation exposure presumptives. So if a veteran was involved in any of these cleanups that took place, at which radiation, they could have possibly been exposed to radiation, the PACT Act, they would be covered under the PACT Act. Okay. So now we're going to look at, as of August 10th, 2022, a long list of new conditions are presumed to be service-connected due to various in-service toxic exposures. Okay, so here is the list. Asthma, I'm not going to read them all, but I'm just going to point out some. Asthma, brain cancer, rhinitis, sinusitis, emphysema, pancreatic cancer, neck cancer. So when we're looking at the exposure to toxins, it's not just Gulf War. We're looking at Vietnam veterans, Agent Orange exposure, some Camp Lejeune, if one was stationed at Camp Lejeune. And then, as we just talked about, Desert Storm, Desert Shield, OEF, OIF. Okay. Holly, any questions?
Sorry, Jen, hold on a second. I was on mute. Yes, I have, one, Iraq, Kuwait is not on the post 9/11 list.
But it's still considered in that region. Okay, I thought I saw another hand, no?
Yes, it's Louisa Jennifer. These conditions, how far after you come back from the locations or?
You just have to be at there's no time limit. Okay, so think about it. When you look at like our Vietnam War veterans, we still have veterans from the Vietnam who served in Vietnam who are filing their first claim now.
Okay.
And it's been, it's been decades. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. It's been decades. So keep that in mind.
a question?
Yes.
Okay, so let's say, for instance, my job was an NBC specialist, and we did all that training people to put their mask on, and we were always in there helping with that. And of course, I have asthma now, so my doctor has been trying to place it with something like that, and I just didn't see it then. Although I was consistently going to the doctor because I couldn't breathe or
But
this
were
or
you
that.
deployed?
No, I don't know.
Okay, so again,
when you mean deployed, was I sent overseas for something?
No, were you deployed to a combat area?
No, not at all.
So again, this is specifically for exposure to toxins while
okay, gotcha.
In a deployed location.
Okay.
Okay, that's why if you go at the very beginning, it shows Vietnam era,
right,
war, and OEF, OIF,
okay,
veteran.
Thanks.
Now, I would say this. This is where I go back in the previous talk, and I spoke of going to having those types of issues documented in your service treatment record. If it is documented that you were seen for breathing issues, asthma, sinusitis, or something like that, and you weren't at a deployed location, but it's documented in your service treatment records that you were treated for that, then you can definitely file a claim for that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so healthcare, from a healthcare side of the house, I'm not a healthcare expert, but I will just leave with this. If you have not enrolled in the VA healthcare system, I strongly, highly beg you, enroll. If you have not enrolled in the VA healthcare system, I highly, strongly encourage you to enroll. These are benefits that we've earned. We've earned these benefits, okay? And if we're eligible, we should utilize that which is there for us.
Jen, I have a question in the chat saying, how do you do that?
Okay, so you can go on va.gov, and you're going to look for what's called the 1010EZ form. That is the enrollment form, 1010EZ. Or you can call 1-800-827-1000, and they can direct you to the proper entity for enrollment. Was there any other question, Holly?
No, you're doing great, Jen.
Okay. So next, VA.
I spoke too soon. Give me 1 second. The question is this in addition to TRICARE?
Okay, so check this out. I'm retired. I got TRICARE, and I also am service connected. Okay. Does that answer the question?
If it doesn't, please pop off mute. That might be the easiest way.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Jen.
Okay, so all veterans enrolled in VA healthcare system. Who is this? Who? All veterans. Toxic screening. This is for all veterans. If you have not heard, VBA, our office at the Newark Regional Office, and VHA, East Orange and Lions, we have been in partnership. And since, I want to say December, we have been, for lack of a better term, going on a road show, and hitting various places throughout the state, hosting PACT Act events. That would include a brief toxic screening, Okay, as you see here, it's a quick 5-minute series of questions to identify and document any potential exposures to toxins during military service. So you'll meet with a physician and you'll have a conversation. Then they may schedule for a further exam if need be. That's the VHA side of the house. We're usually there from VBA to talk about claims and get you kind of set up on the road for claim submission if that is something that you wish to do. So there is a lot going on when we talk about PACT Act and getting our veterans aware, because it's impacting a lot of veterans who have put in claims previously, were denied, and now they can put in what's called a supplemental claim. And I'll talk a little bit about that for previously denied conditions that hopefully will be granted, because now those conditions fall under this umbrella. Any questions, Holly?
Nope, we're doing good.
Okay. So filing claims to receive benefits, same, just as before. New claims, if a veteran is wanting to put in a new claim for a condition that they have never put in before, they would use that 527EZ form. Very simple. As I just said, if it is for a condition that was previously denied, they would use what's called a supplemental claims form, and that's an 0995. And that is if VA denied one of the new presumptive conditions in the past, but the veteran now may be eligible for benefits, VA will take a look at that, and hopefully that denial will eventually become a grant. Now, keep in mind, it will not be a retro grant. Okay, so if you were initially, put in a claim 20 years ago and it was denied 20 years ago, and now because it falls under the presumptive list, you put in a claim now, you're not going to be granted. You will not be getting a big fat retro. We wish, but that's not going to happen. So I would highly encourage you, if you want to go through that process, put in the claim, put in that claim. If you, here it says also pending claims. If a veteran's condition was added to the list of presumptives after a claim was filed, but it has not been decided on, we use the term adjudicated, then VA will consider it on a presumptive basis. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Can you go back? Because I want to read something that's important. I think it's important. Presumptive conditions do not require proof proof that the military service caused the condition. Veterans only need to meet the service requirements and have a current diagnosis of the presumptive conditions. Okay, veterans should submit any supporting documentation to assist their claim. So what that says in short, VA will presume that the condition that you're experiencing is as a result of your time, your deployment at any of those locations at which you were exposed to those toxins. Okay, that's when we talk about presumptive. We're presuming. Okay.
Okay.
Other affected veterans and survivors. What about additional benefits and cares for other veterans and their survivors? So under the PACT Act, survivors may be eligible for VA benefits, including dependency and DIC and burial benefits. So that's a bit of a process, but I would encourage, if you have individuals whose spouse was impacted, they served in any of those deployed locations, and they had and they had an illness at which they succumbed, and more likely than not, that illness is now on the presumptive, you may be able to file for that. Okay, when or how should I file a claim? I think it's very clear. Now, if you haven't applied already, apply now. What if I were previously denied? Apply utilizing the supplemental claims form. Apply. Okay, we have not when we ask not. Apply. Next. Okay, so we talked about PACT Act. Now I'm going to just touch very briefly on veteran service organizations. I cannot express enough how important an accredited VSO is to the process. And I'm going to ask Louisa. VSO?
No, I'm not a VSO.
How important are they?
Oh, yes. Yes, they should be accredited.
Yes.
Because not everyone has the access to the system, and not everyone who call themselves VSO is able to keep up with all the changes.
So having an accredited VSO is paramount.
Yes.
Okay. It is truly, it is to the benefit of the veteran and their family members, and primarily, I can't say it enough, the veteran, to align themselves with an accredited veteran service officer, okay? Trying to wing it alone, it is very frustrating. I can't tell you how many veterans I've spoken to who said, I tried to do this, I don't understand, I'm always getting a denial. And you look on the file and you see that they're doing this by themselves. You need to have an accredited veteran service officer. Now,
Jennifer, just to add to that, the state of New Jersey, Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, we have several VSOs throughout the state. The counties also have accredited VSOs. And as you know, the VA also has accredited VSOs.
yes, it's critical that you align yourselves with one, especially now, if you look on television and you see constantly, this law firm, that law firm, they're offering their services and to help veterans file a claim, right? Have you seen that? Well, you know what's going to happen, right? They're not doing it for free. They're not doing it out the kindness of their heart. There will be some compensation to them at some point in time. So you want, again, Louisa, VSOs, do they charge?
No charge. No, definitely.
Free.
No.
Free.
Yes.
Free.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you don't feel comfortable with a VSO, there's many out there.
Yes.
From the state or the county or the VA.
Yes. So you have, and that's the great thing with the state and the county. They have offices in each county throughout the state of New Jersey. So you have 21 counties, you got 21 officers. Okay, offices with a number of officers in those offices. So that's a resource. You want to utilize those resources.
Hi, can I interject one thing? In Warren County, there are no offices. There are none whatsoever.
State?
In New Jersey, in Warren County.
Warren, you know what? I'm going to give you, write down this number and give me a call. Or Louisa, you want to take that?
Yes, I will.
Okay, can you give her your office number?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, she'll put it in the chat. Awesome. Holly, are there any questions?
no questions in the chat, and I will probably say this more than once. I just want to remind everybody on the call, which we still have a lot of folks on the call, please remember that we're going to be sharing the video of this presentation and other resources, because the knowledge, right, and the dispute of misinformation is so intense that please share this with whether it's other organizations or other individuals. That's why we're doing this. So Jen, thank you so much for covering all this information, but I really don't let it stop here, folks. If there's somebody that you know would benefit from hearing a lot of this information, just please know that we want you to share. So go on, Jen.
Definitely. And I will say this, thank you, Holly. When we hear folks come in talking about they told me this and they said that, and who is the they? Oh, my friends, but they are not VA. Are they VA employees? Not at all. And that's a big part of the misinformation that's going out there. So you want to make sure that you're again aligning yourself with an accredited veteran service officer organization. Go on the VA website, www.va.gov, because that's where the most credible information with regard to veterans benefits, services, that's where you'll find it. Okay, next slide. So another resource that's available, again, online, I just mentioned www.va.gov, G-O-V. The phone number, standard phone number for benefits, 1-800-827-1000. We talked about applications. So here's just some of the basic applications for benefits. 526EZ form. The supplemental claim form is the 0995. MST form 210781A. And then for those who want to have family members provide a lay statement, they can either use the statement in support of claim form, that's 214138, or they can just provide something, on a standard piece of paper. Okay, and also you'll see here on the bottom, www.va.gov/find-forms for those forms.
And folks, don't panic. We will be sending out those slides.
No, we will definitely send out the slides. We are doing telephonic claims clinics, consults. I do not meet one-on-one with individuals anymore after COVID. We found that it's really more advantageous for veterans to set up an appointment for a telephone consult with me. And I avail myself as much as I can to help our veterans when it comes down to claims. So if you have any questions, if you want to reach out to me, my number is here, 973-297-3384, or you can shoot me an email and we can set up an appointment for a telephone consult. So we covered quite a bit. We talked about the VA structure. We talked about VA compensation benefits. We talked about disability services service connection, MST, PACT Act updates, VSOs, and VA resources. So at this time, I'm going to open the floor for questions.
And that's great. And folks, feel free to, I'm going to, maybe what I'll do is stop the recording.
Stop the record, yeah.
So if somebody would like to ask a